Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes kicking off spring practice early next week. Want to get into 5 questions that I have for this Miami Hurricanes team heading into the 2024 season, questions that we hope to get answered as spring practice plays out. Now, for the Miami fans that have been listening to the boys the last couple of weeks, you guys know how high I am on this roster. I think, quite frankly, it's the most talented team in the ACC. And if it all comes together, you're looking at a team that not only can win the ACC, but a team that can make some noise in the college football playoffs. It has to come together on the field on Saturdays. And we spent a lot of time talking about the strengths of this roster. Want to highlight some position groups that I still have some question marks about as well heading into 2024. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Miami Hurricane fans. This is a program you guys know I love talking about. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support, whether it is on the recruiting trail, transfer portal, position deep dives. You guys continue to show a ton of love to the boys. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Now, right off the top, this depth chart, woefully inaccurate. This is largely for me to keep my brain on track as we navigate these questions. And I want to start with the first question that I have, and that is in the secondary, right? This is a team that is built through the line of scrimmage, and partially the reason why I'm so high on this program heading into 2024. I don't know if you see a better program in the ACC along the line of scrimmage than this Miami Hurricanes team. The position group that I probably have the largest questions about is in that back end. I want to start with the cornerback position. Now, I say questions about the cornerback spot. That doesn't mean there are not answers, right? A guy like Damari Brown, extremely talented. You saw him flash as a true freshman. That's probably the guy I'm keeping an eye on the most. Does he take that step to be one of those elite cornerbacks in the ACC? And now another guy that's kind of lumped into the similar category is Jadias Richard, the transfer from Vanderbilt 12 months ago. Jadias Richard, Damari Brown, 2 guys that are extremely talented, box check pretty much every physical trait that you want as a cornerback. The question is, do they put it together heading into 2024? Now, a guy in Daryl Porter coming back is absolutely massive. He was extremely consistent for Miami, and knowing that you have one solid corner is absolutely massive. My eyes are on Jadias Richard and Damari Brown, and potentially Ryan Mack, who's not on campus until the summer, but this is a guy that I watched the Under Armour All-American game and say he can flat out play. He's a guy that I think could be cycled in or at least compete for a job for this Miami Hurricanes defensive back room. And similar to the cornerback situation, you also have some question marks about that safety room. Now, you lose guys like James Williams and Cam Kitchens, 2 guys that played so much football for the Miami Hurricanes the last couple of years, and that kind of puts you in the boat of, all right, we have some talent behind them. We just haven't gotten a chance to see them a lot. First guy I want to talk about is the transfer, Michelle Powell, coming from Washington. Not the best transfer that Miami got, but arguably outside of Cam Ward, the most impactful one. You look at this roster, that was probably the biggest question mark that you had. And for Miami to go out and get a guy that is just damn solid was absolutely huge. You know Michelle Powell is going to come in and give you really good reps at that safety spot. He's seen a lot of football. He's played a lot of football. Another guy I want to talk about, kind of throw him into the Jadias Richard, Damari Brown conversation, is Savion Riley coming from Vanderbilt. Very similar conversation to a guy like Jadias Richard and Damari Brown, where you look at Savion Riley and say, yeah, that could be a really, really good safety at the college level. You just haven't seen it yet at Vanderbilt. Can he come in and be a guy that you're reading the spring practice notes and saying, all right, Savion Riley looks to be a starting corner for Miami? If that is the case, that is going to be absolutely massive. Last guy I want to talk about, Zaquan Patterson. This is a guy that you guys know how I feel about Zaquan Patterson. We talked about him when he committed to Miami. We've talked about him a ton as we've talked about that 2024 class. And what's special about Zaquan Patterson is there's not as much projection there. You ask me who is the most likely to play for the Miami Hurricanes as a true freshman, I'd answer Zaquan Patterson for 2 reasons. One, there's plenty of opportunity to play, whether he's playing that nickel role, whether he's playing that safety role, but more importantly, he is physically ready to play at the college football level. If Savion Riley, Zaquan Patterson, or both, as you're reading the spring practice notes, sound like they're going to, excuse me, be quality guys, that's a massive storyline for Miami, and by far the position group that I'm most excited to read about as spring practice plays out. Next question I have, and this is a question that I don't necessarily feel as strongly about as a lot of Miami Hurricane fans, and that's okay that we disagree. I'm higher on this wide receiver room than I think a lot of Miami Hurricane fans are. You look at a guy in Xavier Restrepo coming back, he's going to lead this team in targets. He's going to lead this team in catches. He's going to lead this team in receiving yards. I think Xavier Restrepo, he's not as flashy as some of the receivers across the country, but he's about as good as any receiver that you see across the country in terms of creating separation, knowing where to sit routes down, having extremely reliable hands. You have your wide receiver one locked up. He's not the prototypical wide receiver one. He's not the 6'3" burner on the boundary, but he's a guy that you see all the receivers getting it done at the NFL level. I mean, that's Xavier Restrepo. His game is going to translate. I think he is an absolute stud. Now, you talk about what's around Xavier Restrepo. One of the questions I have is Jacoby George, and can he unlock his capabilities to the fullest extent? And this is a guy that it's just kind of been a roller coaster watching Jacoby George. You see some reps where like that is a first-team all-conference wide receiver, and then you see him kind of disappear and make some really bad plays, some really bad mistakes. Can he just be a little bit more consistent for this Miami Hurricanes team? And if he does, and he puts it together, you're looking at a very good wide receiver one, wide receiver two duo in Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo. And then some other guys you want to see emerge, guys like Isaiah Horton. I think there's a reason personally, and we have this conversation a lot. A lot of Miami fans were looking for Miami to add a wide receiver in the transfer portal. And the fact that they didn't, but more importantly, the fact that they didn't really even pursue a wide receiver that I know of that much, I think that tells you the confidence that they have in guys like Isaiah Horton or a guy like Ray Joseph, some of those young wide receivers coming up. You not to mention guys like Josiah Trader and Nye Carr early enrolling into this program as well. I look at this wide receiver room and say, I like the names that are in it. Now I'm just monitoring. We know what we have with Xavier Restrepo. Can some of those other guys take that step during spring practice to really ease the concerns at that wide receiver position? That's probably the second question that I have now. The third question is kind of an all-encompassing one, and that is guys coming back from injury. I don't think that a lot of college, I think Miami fans know that. I don't think a lot of the casual college football fans quite understand the injuries that Miami had to deal with on the defensive side of the football, specifically on that defensive line. I mean, Ruben Bain absolutely dominated as a true freshman. You had really good reps from guys like Jared Harrison Hunt, some really good reps from Leonard Taylor at time, who's off to the NFL draft. Akeem Mesidor was an absolute freak for the Miami Hurricanes in 2022. Only played in 2 games before going down with an injury. What does he look like in spring practice? Are we going to get the version of Akeem Mesidor that we saw in 2022? That's a massive storyline. And a very similar conversation, Nigel Lee Kelly, a guy that we knew had all the potential in the world, excuse me, coming out of high school, is Nigel Lee Kelly coming back from injury, putting it together. Those two guys, I certainly have my eye on. The last one I want to talk about is Elijah Arroyo. This is a tight end position that we're kind of desperately kind of banging the table for a little bit more production from. And I know he didn't get hurt in 2023, but he certainly was still feeling the injury from 2022. Can Elijah Arroyo get back to that form, get back to the expectations that we had from him at that tight end spot? That is another question that I have that I would absolutely love to see answered during spring practice. Fourth question that I have is the early enrollee true freshman. And this is, y'all know how I feel about this 2024 class. I think there are a ton of guys that are coming in as true freshmen that can impact this team immediately, right? We talked about Zaquan Patterson in the back end. I think a guy like JoJo Trader, and I feel like Nye Carr just kind of flying under the radar, was one of my favorite wide receivers in 2024. You have some question marks about the wide receiver depth and the playmaking around Cam Ward. JoJo Trader, Nye Carr, two guys that I think could significantly impact this team in 2024. Another guy that I'll just shout out real quick, Elijah Lofton. Now, a lot of you, we just did my breakout performers for Miami a couple days ago. I included Riley Williams in that list. Elijah Lofton already getting the Brevin Jordan comps. You talk about a dynamic pass catcher at that tight end position. Elijah Lofton is not necessarily the prototypical tight end. He's only 6'2", 220 pounds. elite movement skills, elite ball tracking ability, very good after the catch. I wonder if Elijah Lofton can be that guy that emerges in that tight end room heading into 2024. I think that's a really encouraging and intriguing position, that tight end room. You talk about a guy, I mean, Cam McCormick is your blocker. We know what he is going into what is it, 11th, 14th year of college football. But more importantly, you have Elijah Arroyo, who has a ton of potential. We just want to see him healthy. Riley Williams, who's going into year 2. We're really excited about the jump he can take. And then Elijah Lofton. And there's some tight ends that I'm really excited about, but some of those early enrollees, I'm certainly keeping an eye on. A guy like Armando Blunt, certainly my eyeballs are on him as well. Now, the last question that I have, and I have to give the assist to the Miami Hurricane fans, is what this running back room shakes out to be. Now, I don't think many Miami Hurricane fans are asking who's going to be the leading rusher for this Miami Hurricanes program, right? We're talking Mark Fletcher. I think Mark Fletcher is that guy that you talk about how Miami wants to run the football, establish the line of scrimmage, grind down teams. Mark Fletcher's your guy. I think you have Henry Parrish, who I think is a nice compliment to Mark Fletcher. Jay Allen, I think, also looked really good at times for Miami. The guy I want to know, and I have to give the Miami fans the assist on this one, Chris Johnson. When you go back and watch Chris Johnson's film out of high school, this is a guy that has game-changing playmaking ability in terms of the speed that he has, in terms of, hey, I can take one 80 yards to the house anytime I get the football in my hands. Often in the college football landscape, it's just about using your talent in ways to maximize them, right? And we know what Mark Fletcher does best, and that's bang bodies between the tackles. Can you find a way to get Chris Johnson involved in space? Something that I didn't think Miami did a great job of last year. You talk about a guy like Rashard Smith, who you just wanted to see him get the football in space. We never really got to see that. Can you find a guy like Chris Johnson and say, hey, we're going to make a concerted effort to get you the football in space and let you go impact the game with that speed? That's another name that I'm looking at and kind of just reading through the tea leaves of how they're using him in spring practice. Those are some question marks that I have. And again, this is a team that you don't have many questions about. This is a team that is deep on both sides of the line of scrimmage, has really good quarterback play with Cam Ward. I don't have no questions about Cam Ward and what he can do. This is a team that's exciting. If you can kind of figure out some of these position groups that maybe we still have some question marks about, and then maybe after spring practice, go address some of those problems in the transfer portal, this is as dangerous of a team as it gets. Really excited about this team. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.